Good morning, everyone. Great to see everyone. My co-chair Hal's just finishing seeing a couple patients, or hopefully one patient at a time. But we thought it'd be helpful to have this sort of update meeting and lay out a little structure for where to go from here. First, before we go any further, are there any specific questions about what's happened over the last week or so? I'll give you an update from our leadership meeting and talk a little about our deliverables and, of course, some of the challenges just raised by the timing issue as well as the multiple committees. But before we go forward, I just want to see if there's any outstanding questions first. Okay.
So one question I have, I don't quite understand the structure. Maybe you're going to go into it. Sure. Like, are we supposed to go to the leadership meeting and this meeting, or we only go to this meeting? And where is all, like today, this goes on Teams. Somehow this didn't end up on my calendar, on my Outlook calendar.
Okay.
So,
Bettina, these are all great questions. I'll try to answer them as rationally as I can. While you're right, this is a Teams-based process. I am making these arrangements through Zoom, my own Zoom account, which I find to be far more user-friendly than Teams. I'm not sure if anyone else has ever run into that issue, but I can't stand Teams. So that hopefully answers that question. I do believe we sent out an invitation, which should end up in most people's calendars. If somehow it didn't, I apologize for that. In terms of the leadership question, first of all, it's possible, I'm not sure, that we will be actually joined today by some leadership because they've asked to be invited to our meetings anyway. I just don't know whether they come or not. Hal and I do meet every 2 weeks with leadership. And I think that's the basic interaction right now. I don't think that you were just invited to the kickoff to get a broader understanding, as I understand, of this process. Did that answer most of your questions?
Yeah, thanks. Good.
Anything else outstanding there? I know it's confusing. It's really confusing to me and Hal too. Okay. We do have 2 new members. I'd like them to just briefly introduce themselves. I'm sure you may not remember everyone's intro from last time, but I just thought it'd be helpful to have as many people that are new to introduce themselves. So those of you that were at the leadership meeting know that we have thought it'd be very helpful, certainly myself as an infectious disease specialist, is highly value the Wadsworth Center and their infectious disease capability. And I've worked with them for years and love them very much. And we're very fortunate to have Christina Egan to join us from there. Christina, do you want to just say a couple words about yourself? You might just say a couple words about the Wadsworth Center. Some people may not be aware of the critical asset that it is. And I know that many of you are also on the faculty of SUNY Albany.
That is correct. Thank you for letting me join this group. I look forward to it. My name is Christina Egan. I'm the Deputy Director of the Division of Infectious Diseases at Wadsworth Center. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Wadsworth Center is a state public health laboratory. And so we perform a variety of functions, testing clinical specimens for pathogens that there may not be the capability in the clinical diagnostic laboratories. We test environmental samples and food for microbiological agents and toxins, as well as for chemicals and all sorts of different things. We have both surveillance activities and serve as a reference center for a number of different areas. So we're a center for excellence for vaccine preventable diseases in the country through a CDC grant-funded project. We are a center of excellence for the detection of pathogens in food. And I could go on, but we do also have some basic research at the Wadsworth Center. We also work with academic institutions on various types of NIH, NSF, CDC, DITRA, all sorts of different funding agencies. And for those that may not know, we actually also serve as a regulatory body for any clinical laboratory that tests specimens from New York State patients. They have to be regulated through the Clinical Laboratory Evaluation Program. So we review LDTs that are developed and used on New York State residents. And we also regulate environmental laboratories. So we have a wide array of activities. And there's approximately about 800 personnel at the Wadsworth Center. And I'll stop there. And we actually house also, this is, I guess, an important note for this committee, the School of Public Health, Biomedical Sciences, and Environmental Health Sciences programs are actually housed at Wadsworth Center.
Right, yes, and as you indicated, there's a very strong NIH funding base there, which is relevant for us. And then the other additional member is Mei-Fing Lin from Brookhaven, I believe. Is that correct, Mei-Fing? And maybe you can
Yes.
speak a little bit about your work and how Brookhaven might be relevant here.
Yeah. So thank you for letting me join this working group. Yeah, my name is Mei-Fing Lin. I'm from the Computational Science Initiative at Brookhaven National Lab. I don't know if you guys know about Brookhaven National Lab. So we are a DOE, Department of Energy National Lab located on Long Island, New York. And the division I'm in, Computational Science Initiative, focuses on the computational, mathematical, and data science methods to support a diverse range of scientific domains, including medicine and epidemiology. And so the reason I joined this working group is because we are standing up a digital twin institute to support digital twin development in different scientific applications and also in biomedical fields as well. So we're actually working with some industry partners to set up the computational infrastructure as well as computational and mathematical methods to support this biomedical digital twin development. So I'm a computational scientist myself, so I don't have any background in medicine. But I think in this working group, what we can contribute to is to leverage the potential data and domain knowledge you guys have for the digital twin development that we are planning.
Great, thanks much. And is there anyone who wasn't at the first meeting who would just like to briefly introduce themselves? Okay. Hearing nothing there, we'll move on. So at the risk of putting the cart before the horse, I just wanted to highlight what our ultimate report might look like, recognizing we haven't even gotten close to that, but I just wanted you to get a sense on what that will do. Obviously, we will, Hal and I will do most of the work involved in getting that together, but yesterday we all received a format of what that's going to be, and I'm going to try and show that to you if you guys can see that. Can you guys see that first slide there?
Yes.
Okay, great. And you can still see it, right? Correct? Good. So this report to be due sometime in March will be a 10-page report with an initial assessments of strengths and weaknesses of SUNY, and then looking at sort of a classic SWOT analysis of sort of where we plan to go. And then the more important core will be the recommendations and actionable plan, which opportunities do we want to pursue, and when and how we will pursue them. That will be a little bit of a larger discussion. And then what investment is needed to implement the plan? Now, I have to be frank. I specifically asked the program leadership yesterday, do you have a gross sense on how much we're talking about here, what the investment might be from the, and they are just, there is no answer to that question, which I found a little bit challenging, but I guess they assume that we will be able to work somehow around that issue. And finally, the last piece, what stakeholders should be included. There's no question that they're looking for cross SUNY and our / New York State engagement, whether it involves each of our campuses versus a consortium of 2 or more, I think will be something that will be part of the conversation moving forward. So I just wanted to give you a sense of the what we would be doing, what our expectations are here in terms of the product. And obviously, I also want to make it clear that we, our hands are slightly tied behind our backs on some of this too. Any questions about that before we move forward? So next, I wanted to talk a little bit about the meeting we had with leadership, and hopefully Hal will pop in here at some point, because he was there and actually gave a presentation for us. As you all, I think, are well aware, there's a number of other committees addressing biotechnology in terms of a wide variety of areas. Yet this committee has a rather diffuse engagement, if I can say. Cancer, cardiovascular and infectious diseases, and immunity. And I think it'd be worthwhile having a brief conversation about how to address those issues. I think the issue that came up in the conversations last week were, well, maybe we should just be looking at supporting the investment of various resources across the SUNY system, such as biobanking, bioimaging, et cetera, versus trying to separate out into the 3 or 4 disciplines that we have and figuring out, whether or not there might be some specific initiatives in those individual disciplines. And I think that, Hal, I thought it'd be helpful at least to have a conversation here about this essential challenge, recognizing the relatively short time frame that we have, and also recognizing that the other committees may be playing a bigger role in identifying specific technologies. And with that, I'm just going to open it up for a moment and see where people's thoughts or minds might be on that. Sure, Sathian, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, other groups are, they focus on some specific things, but this group is the one that finds the application or the realizing all the technologies or anything, kind of a clinical testing of anything. So I think we could play an important role in advancing the technologies developed by any other methods, so that it is in our hands. And then probably we are focused on 3 disease specific areas. And also the second thing it brings us is that from my perspective, from University at Buffalo perspective, that we have our school and we have infrastructure in terms of drug development, like biotechnology, particularly biotechnology development, because it requires an interdisciplinary approach of immunology, pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, dosage form methods. So we have a unique expertise in pharmaceutical biotechnology that we can leverage on that kind of. We can make a dosage form and then take it up to first in human. And then there are a lot of physicians in this group. We can set up a clinical trial or translational activity. So we can provide as a support of biospecimen, biobanking, and also biological modalities development, and then taking up to translational ability. And based on my past experience with David, they don't expect any budget, but we propose something in the range of about $400 to $500 million of approach for immunity and infectious disease. So I think we should not keep it's a certain dollar amount we can propose as much as we want. But in my opinion, we can have a biobanking, as you said, and then bioimaging and a kind of a biologic development as a source, and then testing them and translating them type of a position in these particular 3 disease areas. That's just my 2 cents.
So you would propose having this go over all 3 diseases, not having a specific, not doing one of those, which is sort of the conversation we had last week.
Yes, we'll keep it common and then go from there, probably 3 campus or 4 campus model of disease specific areas. And also, there is a connecting theme in all our things would be a biotechnology or that help translational effort. That may be the connecting theme for all these 3, even though 3 different disease areas, but connecting theme would be what's the biotechnology resources like biobanking, bioimaging, and biologics development.
Another advantage of that approach is the fact that, as you're writing your introductory paragraph, you're literally going to tie into each of the different vested interests, because you can say to them, if heart disease happens to be your area that you're most worried about, or that's the area where you want to see funding going, then the argument that cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer and the #1 cost to New York State, becomes there. If you're looking at cancer and you're saying it's the disease it's the most dreaded disease, and it's the one that that we are on the cusp of solving, and that's where we need to put our effort. Or if it's just that we've made it through a pandemic and the inflammatory cascade and everything is the thing that's the new frontier, and we're going to face this challenge again. Whatever those different areas are, then tie into this technology. And so by cross-cutting all of them with the technology, I think it makes an argument that it's really hard to defeat at the funding level, because there's nobody who's going to say this isn't an important thing based on how they read the proposal. So that's a great argument, to go ahead and focus in on the technology.
And Hal, as long as you have this floor, is there anything else you wanted to say from the leadership meeting on Tuesday?
Yeah, no, I'm sure you probably went through everything, that needed to be gone through. The gist of it is that, we started off by telling them that they had dealt us a hand that they dealt nobody else, which was to go ahead and take 3 fully separate areas that have so much potential for New York State and for bringing technology in here, and kind of driven it together in an artificial way that would make us have to either consider that it's the technology across 3 separate areas that we're going to focus on, or that we take each individual disease area and figure out what's the most important biotechnology questions that we could ask in terms of each individual disease, and then give them 3 separate pillars. And so I think that that's probably what Jack talked about with it. I think they were impressed with the proposals, the phase 1 proposals that came out of each one of the groups, and saw that as an enormous strength. And now it's up to us to kind of AI it together and figure out how do we present it going forward. But I think Jack did a great job of letting advocating for letting this group really kind of dream big. The second point that I took from it is that they're not looking for buildings. They're not looking for brick and mortar. What they're looking for, though, is for the SUNY campuses to really unite and to have crosstalk and to have cross-fertilization. And they did not discount the manpower requests, so that postdocs, funding for young investigators, they did not discount that that couldn't be a part of the proposal, as we face an economic time. And then finally, and this was something that Bettina raised, is that, the practical aspects of delivering on promises, quick win promises to get patients and databases and biobanking in a way that will be short-term beneficial is something they would also entertain. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, so let's hear from the group. Carlos, you had your hand up. Several people have. Go ahead, Carlos.
Yes, I agree that there are.
Oh, so it's hard to hear you. Can you get closer to the mic?
Yes, I agree. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better.
Turn on my microphone, but I agree. There are a lot of resources within SUNY that can be used to leverage expertise and develop biotechnologies. I think one other thing that we could contribute is a focus. When Sati mentioned a translational aspect to it, I would go even a little bit further. We were in the first meeting discussing point of care devices as one of the things, and I was thinking it would be interesting to develop deployable, like in the community, deployable biotechnologies, point of care biotechnologies that that can touch some of the bigger themes in this group, like, for example, addressing health disparities, so that these units can be moved into not just inner city, but also rural areas, which is a huge portion of New York State. So I think as a focus of, these biotechnology initiatives within SUNY centers, the focus would be something very practical for medicine, for clinical medicine, such as, let's say, developing technologies that are specific and useful for deploying in the field, for example, in a pandemic, or in an area that is low on cardiology resources and so forth. So I think it's just an approach on top of the resource use in SUNY.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point. And, we have something called Healthy Me, where we go ahead into libraries and underserved communities and deploy instruments for measuring blood pressure and heart rates and things along those lines. And we're extending it into heart failure, and we're extending it into chest pain types of instrumentation, so that patients really can, through their handhelds, become really connected with with their disease states. I can imagine, though, if you take the next step forward and you look at advanced biotechnology that you can simplify, so that it isn't getting to a doctor's office, or it isn't having to be screened, by a healthcare professional, that they can actually take more control. The device companies do not focus on underserved populations. They do not focus on, they're looking at either cutting edge disease, or they're looking at people who can pay for stuff. So that would be a real service that SUNY could offer.
It was also highlighted in the summary reports from phase 1. So I think you're touching on an interesting piece. I'll go to Bettina and then Sati. Bettina, go ahead.
So the way I look at this is that sort of this biotechnology umbrella is huge. It's very big. And so the way I divide this is I look at small molecule development, I look at biologic development, which is usually antibodies, and maybe a separate session could be CAR-T or phages. And then I look at actual biotechnology, like making a pacemaker, making something that is actually an engineering device. And then looking at this sort of broader thing of of bringing medicine to the community, which could be a software program, which could be something rolling out where we have a hotline that takes care of all these mental health problems, like Arizona does, or something like that. And they all require everybody requires patience, and it's not going to be difficult to describe the need, but they all require very, very different structural investments. If we go into drug development and we want to have a GDP like production facility, you're not going to make both biologics and small molecules in the same. It's going to be two separate things. And I think we do run into the risk of, developing antibodies. I can tell you, when you make an antibody, you're going to start pitching and you're going to hope and pray that a big company is going to buy you up, who's by far going to outbeat any university in terms of production getting it on the market. And I think we need to sort of understand how far SUNY is really going to be able to compete in the final step. And sort of become more precise in what is actually feasible and realistic. Having worked now 10 years in SUNY and having worked in other universities, I would not say that this is the fastest place in the world in terms of getting something developed. And there's so much investment and so much risk in developing drugs in the last stage. So we should really ask ourselves, should we focus on getting things into IND and then get them sold off? Or are we going to go all the way? Are we going to focus on one drug and then which drug? There's no way SUNY can start competing, making 10 new drugs. It's just, I don't think that's realistic. Even with $500 million, we're talking about a much, much higher investment. And so part of that, I feel guided by what we have and what we actually are focusing on within the universities. If we don't even have a core facility for antibodies at SUNY. They closed that down. And we don't even have a place where you can go and say, humanize my antibody, so we got to be a little bit realistic. And what is a project putting finances in that is actually going to deliver within the next 10 years? That's all I want to say.
So I'd love to hear everybody kind of comment on Bettina's comments, but what I will say to you is that the gist and the feeling that we got, and when I surfed around their websites, they're looking for us to partner with industry on all of those things, that they do not want us to go alone. They don't want to reinvent the wheel. They don't want to compete. They don't want to do a moonshot where we go ahead and we say, as New York State, we're going to do this. But they are perfectly willing to bankroll or to accept the concept that these are brilliant ideas and our SUNY investigators may have unique insights, and that by partnering with industry, that that they'll accept that as part of one of the things that we want to do. But I'd love to hear anybody else comment on the remarks that Bettina made.
Well, indeed, Sathi had his hands up, so he's probably uniquely qualified to address that. Sathi, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yes.
You don't need to call me sir, by
the important thing is translating anything. There is a huge death valley. As Bettina said, we need consortium industry to pick it up, and that's what they're looking for. And then, focusing on, modern biotechnology like gene therapy, mRNA vaccines, antibodies. These are all require, at least we will take it up to first in human and partner with industry to take it further. We have a good model. We have a industry consortium that supports some of our efforts. This is a place where a lot of innovation can happen. A lot of our technologies could be translated into, real therapies. So that requires challenge, a lot of money, and that's where we have to partner. But at least from bedside to at least first in human dosing, we can take it further for all three diseases and then partner with industry. We have a consortium called Center for Protein Therapeutics. They fund us. some aspects of it, and there is a consortium, big industry consortium for each disease specific, and we can tap into those. And also, New York State has invested in many of these things like EDI, Empire Discovery Institute, that does precisely the job. And I'm fortunate to have one of my technology move through EDI. There are chances of making this to translate whatever the academic research and realize its potential. And I think this is a great opportunity for us, whether it is a device or it is a technology that addresses many health needs, is a good place to start. I think I spoke a lot, so I'll stop here.
Wonderful. It's very helpful. Mira, were you gonna address what Bettina mentioned or move
Yeah,
beyond that?
yes, I actually had a comment on that. I thought those were really good points. I'm looking at it a little bit more from really preclinical, basic science point of view. But for example, the word biosensors was mentioned, and we have some faculty here at Upstate who are developing protein-based biosensors, so they don't fall into either therapeutics or antibodies or small molecules, but they're biosensors that they would like to eventually use for point-of-care testing. But it's really early stage, so we're not even talking patients. We're talking basically making proteins and seeing if they work as biosensors in cells. So I think at that point, there's probably also an opportunity for trying to get NIH or DoD funding. And I don't know whether the funding, bringing in funding at the level of preclinical or maybe a small business stage is also something that we want to mention as a potential outcome of investing in this type of work.
think that's where I think that is where they were heading, that they want to stimulate, that they want to kind of fertilize the ground, and that by going ahead and picking a biological biosensor, early stages that, where we're just figuring stuff out, all the way to what Carlos was talking about of, delivering it to underserved communities as, as a sensor. I think that would be a wonderful way to kind of frame the question to bring funding and attention to both aspects of detection.
Yeah, and having served on the DoD review panels, some of them also typically include specialists who will evaluate the technology transfer plan. So I think obviously having resources to help people kind of plan for how they're going to eventually translate it into something that can be turned into a small business and then sort of partnered with a company would be nice. But I think a lot of the work that people do is really early stage, and then they just have to have a plan for how it's going to move further.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's sort of at this stage, since everything is so broad that they're asking sort of for a vision biotechnology wise. And I think having the theme, because when you have the theme, okay, we have the resources, we can make devices, we can make biotechnologies, but for what? So having that theme unites a lot of places, because then, okay, now we know we're doing this device, but this is the goal of this device. So I think that's very, because then, the specific things that get developed, and that comes when the budget comes, but I think at least that unifies many centers from SUNY, and it gives them a vision and a goal of where to, what to do, what to use the resources for.
How do you think SUNY is uniquely, with the campuses for, let's say we pick something like device point of care and both biosensors, and we go ahead and we take a look at across 3 diseases. How is SUNY, what's the unique part of SUNY that we can then bring to bear as the 4th level of that discussion? Is it the patient populations? Is it the, the different technologies that exist on those campuses already? Is it the, cross-fertilization? Is it the ability to test in different environments? Like what makes it unique for SUNY that we can pitch that to the governor?
But I think this, Roberta, from the cancer perspective, I think the appealing part to have, with my colleagues, we're thinking about to build this consortium is really the statewide printing of SUNY. I mean, this is a unique, and it's more urban and rural and socioeconomic disadvantage, disparity. I mean, SUNY does have the capacity nobody else has here in the state of New York and across the nation. I don't think you might see the same type of university setting. That to me is the treasure that SUNY has, and then that to me is really the main, the disease specific team. I think what our major strength is our patients and how we can provide these patients. I think the biotechnology expertise that we have in the other groups and other task force, we can inform them, yes, this is really what we want to apply to in which clinical setting. But I think the clinical part to me is our major strength, and how we coordinated that. And the only way to do it is really through a consortium type of structure.
I want to second on that. I think this is really important. We have to see ourselves like the Kaiser system in California.
Exactly.
If you want to go into a cancer
Exactly.
trial, you can go to Sloan and they have a big choice, but you got to live in New York. You know how many people cannot afford to even commute into the city to be part of this? Even if it's only 3 weeks to have people visit you, you have to be able to afford. So we can roll out something that is state-wise, the same way Kaiser rolled out state-wise, the same way CVS rolls out state-wise, the same way the British healthcare system, NHS, rolls out state-wise, and Israel rules out state-wise. If we would have all the same healthcare record, it would help us. But I think that's what we have to drive home. So putting us all on the same EMR would be a huge advantage.
I mean, the advantage of,
Christina
Kaiser
said, it's a regulatory knowledge, regulatory body, connection to the state, patients, and specific knowledge. Like, for example, at Upstate, we have Frank Middleton, which I'm sure that to the infectious disease people here, he's known. So expert in saliva testing, that so I think there's specific knowledge, but also the unique things that as a state university with a lot of campuses, that's the unique thing.
EMR is a real weakness. I'll tell you, it's a huge weakness if you don't have the EMR.
And to follow up on Bettina's earlier point, not just that, we could partner with companies, but I think a lot of times institutions like ours, in the government, for example, what they specifically fund is high-risk areas that private and industry do not invest in. And so that's the other component of this, is that, companies are not going to invest in X or Y and these high-risk areas, then it's something also that the state has a role in.
Before we go to Sathi again, I just wanted to validate what Bettina is saying. I think the fundamental challenge of Kaiser, though, is it has a rather narrow socioeconomic group that goes to there. The advantage that we have, obviously, is we have a very broad socioeconomic group. What we're lacking is any sort of data warehouse that Kaiser has that we don't have. And I think that's something you've spoken about in the past, and is something that didn't even come up, as far as I'm aware, in the initial phase 1 piece here. So it's something worth reconsidering here.
Jack,
Sathi,
go ahead. Sorry, Jack, something related. Sathi, I don't mean to cut you off. I've been sitting here very silent for a long time. I completely agree with Roberto. The big challenge with this document that we're trying to create, it has to be broad, but at the same time, it needs to be specific. And you cannot have it both ways. We can produce a document that treats or detects all the diseases under the sun. But at some point, you need to be specific. And what are our strengths? The point of equity as well, it needs to be, all the stakeholders needs to have benefit from this equally. It cannot be only selected centers. Some centers going to be left out. That's why what Roberto came up with this consortium, it was amazing. Bettina, I'm with you. Absolutely, health, patient, but this is not the purpose of this document, to the best of my knowledge. I think the forces above, even they don't know what they want in this document. I'm being blunt in here so everybody's on the same page. They don't know what they want, and they're asking us for something that even they don't want. They want us to produce something, and God forbid we produce something wrong, we're going to be punished for it. So, of course, the document has to be broad, but at the same time, needs to be specifics. There has to be some specific examples that can knock the socks off them. One of them was the one that we suggested. Once you put something forward, it will be very difficult for them to say no. And it is doable. It all depends what are the agenda. So we can sit here and have a discussion and, for the lack of better word, not spending our time wisely, but the decision has already been made. And again, I'm being completely blunt. However, there are some missed opportunities. I don't want to miss great opportunities. Cancer is one of them, cross-campus, cross-institute. And this can be done. That was my monologue. I stop and let my other colleagues talk now.
Okay, well, Hal, did you want to say something before we go to Sathi?
Yeah, I just want to specifically address, because I think Mehdi's bringing up some really, really great points, and I think it deserves to be fleshed out among the group. The first point to kind of bring up is that this is a document that we're trying to put into the hands of legislators to give large sums of money to the SUNY system. That's the end point of this. This is not to win hearts and minds. This is not to solve a problem or cure a disease, God bless you, or anything else along those lines. It's to create a document that politicians will feel proud to present to the legislature, to be able to try and get dollars earmarked towards the larger goals of what we're trying to do. And so that I think, we have a disadvantage and an advantage. The disadvantage is the fact that they really want it to be about the technology and the biotechnology and the specific things that we're doing. And the reason they lumped all the diseases together is because they wanted the other groups to be the technology groups. They wanted the other groups to be really talking about the nuts and bolts of how they are going to fund those parts of it. But they also recognize that we're the most attractive and most relatable part of the proposal that they're about to do. And that when the lawmakers take this into their hands, they're going to look at the ability to make inroads into social determinants of health, disadvantaged communities, to be able to go ahead and say that they're the ones fighting the war on cancer or on heart disease, or anything like that. That's what their constituents are going to relate to. And so I wouldn't be pessimistic from the point of view of our group, because we don't have to define the actual projects that we're looking at. We're defining how we give a sword to the legislators to be able to say they want to approve, staked our claim as a group to be able to bring resources to people at the institutions and cross institutions that are doing it. You mentioned the way that we kind of do it on a political level. And I made the list as you guys were talking. So on the one hand, we can talk about jobs, and not just jobs, but high technology jobs, high scientific jobs, intermediate scientific jobs, support staff for it. That we're going ahead and we're taking a look at databases to be able to organize the healthcare and the resources, the devices that we have, the institutes that we have, the people that we have, that we can bring to bear against different types of funding opportunities. When you were talking about how this interacts with the state, this becomes, the vehicle to be able to do it. And then you talk about the patients, you talk about the affordability and the locations. Each one of these things becomes a vehicle within why to go ahead and do stuff on antibodies, why to do stuff on small molecule, why to do it on gene editing, because these are the overarching topics that we can go through. So I think that your points are great, but I would say that I would not be scared of it and I would not be pessimistic about it. I think that The worst that can happen is we'll waste our time. And the best that could happen is there'll be a large funding vehicle created that we're going to be able to apply to as groups across and really kind of take things, the next step forward. So I'm sorry if that went on too long.
Great. Sathi, and then we're going to have to sort of begin to think about closing and moving on to the next steps. Sathi, but go ahead.
Yeah. So, I agree. 96% of the things what we do, nothing happens about that. But it's the difficult part is finding out what the 4% yields something. That is where it is. So I think the strength for us is the technology. SUNY filed about 78 patents wide, it's like a biotechnology-based technologies last cycle. And training. For example, the training we give interdisciplinary training to develop a biotechnology drug products. Nobody in the country does it this interdisciplinary. Because of that, we got about $1.2 million per year to train postdocs and graduate students. So we train about 12 to 13 postdocs and graduates are funded by industry consortium. They need people who are trained in this clinical pharmacology or biotechnology derived drugs. So we get about from Amgen, AbbVie, Merck, any big pharma, we have about $1.2 to $1.6 million we get every year to train people in this interdisciplinary area, so they hire them. So we have this unique opportunity to provide that training, and we have technologies, and then we that kind of leverage that. I'm sure that each campus has the unique ability in this area. So we'll identify the technologies, identify the resources, and that put us in a unique spot, and then build on that. I'll stop right here.
Right. The only other thing I would add, Hal said we've been given this disease-specific process. I look with jealousy to the other disease-specific committee, and that is brain health. I mean, at least they have a clear focus, whereas we're a little bit all over the place. But hopefully between the two of us and the other technology committees, we'll be able to pull things together. And even this being our second chat, I can see our focus increasing. Anybody else have any specific comments to make before we move to next steps?
If I could just add one comment, and that is that I don't want to forget in all this that I think you mentioned at the beginning that I want to make sure we include in there the support for the, hiring faculty in areas of need. It's not a building effort, but hopefully we can support core facilities and cutting edge resources, because all that's really the ground from which the technology grows. And so I just want to make sure we don't lose sight that I think a SUNY strength is the basic side of the research, and we want to make sure that doesn't get lost.
Right, but postdocs have clearly been mentioned, and I'm sure faculty is a piece of that. I don't know if there's been, but that's a very.
But core facility is critical, and in the last 10 years, all the core facilities, because they require staff salaries, they have all been closed. The majority of them have been closed down at Stony Brook. Just to give you some examples, we don't have good metabolomics, we don't have hybridoma facilities, and the problem is that this cannot be funded out of NIH grants. This has to be funded out of, this has to be core money that the university provides, because you need people in these positions that stay in these positions and don't leave after they're trained and are brought away from the industry. And this is a huge weakness, and that sets us apart from other major good state universities, because that's what they have. They have fantastic core facilities, and we don't.
Right. So the concept of getting all these biobanks and other issues together is going to be a little ridiculous if we don't have those core facilities to do the analytic piece.
And I think support for the staffing for those facilities actually is an excellent.
Sure.
If the state could provide, if they're interested in postdocs, I think staff support for core facilities would be something we really could push.
Right.
Interesting way that we may be able to leverage that is to talk about training staffing for that. And so through our SUNY education system, we could be training the people to staff the core facilities, giving them hands-on training and providing a ready workforce for us to tap into, and not have to go on monster.com and, hope that somebody's moving from Idaho here. So we may be able to leverage our educational benefit, our educational prowess to say that these are the types of technology fields that we want to train our undergraduates in. I know that as I'm writing these things out, and I have a Frankensteinian type of thing that I'm kind of putting through. I'll use the word fear since Mehdi used it back there. The fear that I have as I'm looking through this is that all of a sudden we're looking like the technologies. That each one of the technology groups that have been set up, all of a sudden we swing away from the diseases and we go more to the technologies. But I think I want to embrace the fear and say that let's pick the 3 technologies that we want to do. Let's go ahead and in the have those as the rows. Then as the columns, we have the disease states that we have as one of the columns, that we have the hiring, we have the equity, we have the core facilities, we have the technology, and then what SUNY has to offer within that context as the columns that overlap with the 3 areas that we want to pursue. Is that a good blueprint, or do you guys want to do it in a different way?
Hal, may I ask you, my thumbs up, whatever you say, actually, my thumbs up, but a quick question. Since you brought it up, if you allow me to ask you this question,
Please.
the reader, the ultimate reader of this document is a politician, correct?
No, it's the politician's staff aide who is in college and really wants to do wonderful things in the world. And they're going to translate it for the politician.
Believe me,
pager.
Believe me, I'm on a kidney cancer advocacy group, and I have dealt with these people annually, a few times, for the past 10 years. My question to you is, does this document need to be tailored for that kind of audience?
Yeah, I think you want to, my read on it is that we show them an impressive document that could be read at a PhD level, but that we break it down so that they have talking points off of it, so they understand that what we're trying to say, and they can relate that to whoever they have to relate it to. But I think we want our hierarchy within the SUNY system to be able to look at this and say, this is a real credible document with specifics that address issues, and they understand how this is going to benefit SUNY and the investigators at SUNY.
I also think SUNY higher-ups will be doing some of that translating, Mehdi, so that we don't need to dumb it down too much, because there'll be several steps before it ends up on that college student's desk.
I completely understand. My point was, right now, I feel like, again, forgive me for saying this if I'm blunt, we are splitting hair, and some of these things can be like, we don't need to be too detailed at this stage once we hit the right points.
Right. No, I would agree. So I think Hal and I will try to use the formatting that he just laid out.
Jack, can I ask one question of the group? Because it's something that I'm wondering myself. If we were going ahead and breaking this up into diseases, I think I know how we would break up the group. You know what I mean? That it would become very obvious, your area of expertise. But because everything is going to cross over each one of the groups, it becomes a little bit harder to figure out what everybody is doing tomorrow or tonight or on Sunday or next week. And so I'd love to leave this meeting with a consensus of next steps that everybody gets engaged in, because the prowess that we have, on this committee, it's remarkable. And so, to get everybody doing it, I'd rather it not be Jack and I that are going to start writing a first draft of something. I would much rather it be that we put a couple of frameworks up there in space. You guys edit it the way that you think it should go. We have 3 or 4 models. We pick the model, and then we go through. Mira?
Yeah, I just have a question as to whether we can use something that I was just working on with someone at Upstate. So we were actually working on the Empire Innovation Program proposal for SUNY. So it's a hiring proposal, but our focus was biosensors and bioimaging in disease processes. So I don't know if it makes sense to use some of the language that we might have written for that. I'm not sure that would be considered self-plagiarizing or
That this sounds
Oh.
perfect. Like I said, the fact that we use some of the language of one of our investigators on this group, or that we take, something that you're doing and that we put it into the proposal, I don't think is going to be, if they fund it, we're not going to say, okay, sorry, Mira, here's your money.
Mhm.
We're going to
Right.
be saying that, that we got $500 million and we're going to come up with a proposal strategy. This group will come up with a proposal strategy, hopefully, to be able to see how we go ahead and utilize this money, on a cross SUNY system. So I'm not worried that, there'll be sway or that thing. What we're trying to do is give them something that they say is of importance and needs to be funded. Jin Fang?
Yeah, I just want to quickly say that we should build in clear deliverables, milestones with this report.
I think that's what they're asking for in that report, so.
3 to 5,
yeah,
3
yeah.
to 5 year, and
Yeah.
how you get to 3 years, and then how the 3 years get you to 5 years. You're absolutely right, Jinping.
I gotta go make grounds. But I think Hal and I are gonna figure out between our schedules when we're gonna set up some weekly meetings that hopefully most of us can make. And then we'll try to work on that feedback process that will ensure that we engage everyone. How do you want to have?
Everybody have access to the Google Docs? Has everybody been there already?
Well, remember, it's the Teams docs, not the
Teams Docs, sorry. Has everybody been to the Teams Docs?
No.
Or
How do you get there?
No.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. Yeah, I think I've been there.
Annie Huang, if you need any access to Annie Huang, who you've all heard from, can give you immediate access. She's been very responsive.
All right,
Okay.
so so I think we'll try and get a framework up there. We'll encourage everybody to kind of be involved with it, and then I think what I'd love to hear is like individuals saying when they take a look at the initial things that we put up there, this is what I want to work on, or this is where I think I'm going to be of most use to the group. And if we can do that and make some progress, and then get together on a weekly basis or on a bi-weekly basis, because I think our deadline is 2 weeks.
I feel like it's a little longer than that, Hal, but at our next meeting, we'll get a clearer idea, I'm sure.
All right. Anybody else have any comments that they'd like to make before we wrap up?
I think disease epidemiology has to for sure be part of this because we don't have really strong disease-based epidemiology. And that will benefit all three, cancer, cardiac, and infectious disease. To really have a statewide program that can really produce numbers.
Remember you were talking about a computing or a software arm of this? Maybe we can build that into it across 3 different disease states and, really kind of create that as a real strength of New York. Anybody else?
Okay.
I don't see how that cannot be sort of a central feature. I think we talked about this last time, right? They're looking for the high tech, and AI is as high a tech as anything right now. And I think that plays well with what Bettina just mentioned.
And they just passed, and they just funded this gigantic New York State AI initiative. And so leveraging off of that and showing how the disease states actually, can impact that. I think you guys are onto something there. I think it'll be very attractive.
And it makes it attractive for the industry also, if we can give that connection, and if we can sell that we are going to bring in industry, especially upstate where it's cheaper to produce. Nobody wants to be in the city with those prices.
Mei-Fang?
Yeah, so I'm glad that somebody brought up the AI. So that's something that Brookhaven can certainly contribute to. And one of the main goals of the biomedical digital twins is to be able to enable personalized treatment if we have the capability to provide predictive modeling of the disease progression. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. So that's how but digital twin idea could tie into this.
There were a couple of people that didn't speak during our time together today. Do any of them want to say anything, just even to give a perspective from what they're thinking? Are we off base and this didn't resonate with you, or if you have certain thoughts that you might like to share?
So Ken Schroyer here. I was unfortunately about 20 minutes late at least, and joining the meeting. So I connected as Bettina was providing her overview. I agree strongly with everything that Bettina said and most of the other comments that have been made. So I think that this is important, and you are all on the right track, and that we also need to be very cognizant, as suggested, of what the limitations are here at Stony Brook and other SUNY hospitals.
Thank you, Ken. Anybody else?
Hi, Sam Ryu here. I also heard all those very attentively. I agree with all what was discussed there. No objections, and I fully agree with that.
Thank you, Sam. All right.
Okay. We have a recording. We'll send this out. And Hal, any final comments?
No, I think that it's an austere group, and I think that again, at the very, very worst, we're going to make friends with each other, and and we'll have some cross collaborations and insight into what everybody is doing. And at the best, there's going to be a large funding sum, being advertised next year that this group and the SUNY system will benefit from. And in between those two things is us getting a white paper together that kind of describes what we can offer. The SUNY in terms of being competitive in the world ahead.
Great. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.